Hello again. Today I'm going to make Hunter's chicken. Lots of different ways of making it, but this is the version that we prefer, so see what you think of this one. So for this we need a pan that will go on the top of the hob, and it needs to have its own lid. I've got a non-stick kind of frying pan thing, and I'm going to use half an onion, which I'm going to chop quite finely. If you wanted to, you could use spring onions or leeks, but you need something that's got that oniony flavour. So I'll just take off that outer layer, which doesn't look very nice actually. And then I'm going to use a bridge, and that sticky layer there often makes it slippery, so I'm going to get rid of that. So a bridge, and cut through in the direction of the lines that go down top to bottom of the onion. And then holding it together, go across, and you'll get little pieces. And when you put it into the pan, it will break up, and you'll have got nice little bits of onion. That last bit often slips, so you might have to just do that bit separately. So there's my onion. And the other thing I need, and I'm going to fry these together to begin with, is either bacon or pancetta. And I've got cubes of pancetta and a piece of bay leaf in there. I'll get rid of that. So if you wanted to use bacon, you could use streaky bacon and snip that up into little pieces. So we're going to fry those together, but we need to get the chicken ready too. And for this I'm using thighs. I've got 4 thighs because this is going to be enough for 2 people, so if you wanted to do enough for 4, obviously you just need to double everything. So with these thighs, if you don't like touching it, use a fork and a pair of scissors, but you need to pick these up and cut them into 4 pieces. Check for bone if you can do that, if you don't mind touching it, because sometimes they're not butchered terribly well. There's a piece of bone there, get rid of that. So in half and then in quarters for each one. There we are, that's that. Now at this stage I'm just going to wash my hands. Right, now in addition to that you're going to need some herbs. You're going to need a bay leaf, a nice one. You're going to need about half a teaspoon of dried rosemary. You're going to need some wine or stock, and you need about 60 millilitres. Red wine, white wine, chicken stock, whatever you prefer. Then we're going to use half a tin of tomatoes, chopped tomatoes, and half a tin of cannellini beans going at the very end. Now I know it's inconvenient to be left with half a tin of these things, but the beans will freeze if you've got some left over, and the tin tomatoes go into all sorts of things, so that's not a problem to have those in the fridge, is it? So we're going to go over to the cooker and we're going to start frying all these lovely ingredients. Now I'm going to turn the gas on under this pan and put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom. If you've got streaky bacon, you probably won't need quite as much oil. And the first thing we do is get our onion in. And then we add our pancetta. I use that spoon. And break that up. And you can see that that falls into nice little pieces. In goes the pancetta. And we want these to start frying. So I'll turn that off there. Now you can see this is sizzling nicely, you probably hear it as well. And you can tell that the onion is beginning to get softened. It's changing its colour, it's becoming a little bit transparent. The pancetta is beginning to cook and some of the fat is rendering out of it. Don't worry about that because actually that has a lovely flavour. So now we add our chicken, and we're going to do it before the bacon or the pancetta gets too crispy. So in goes the chicken. Just turn that down a bit. And we want to try and get the pieces of chicken just starting to seal. You can see that the pancetta is carrying on cooking, so that's why you don't want it too well done before you put the chicken in, otherwise it will start to burn. So turn your pieces of chicken over. A fork is really helpful for this. And we'll give that a minute or 2 for the chicken to cook on the other side and brown a little bit. I always think it's quite difficult to get chicken brown because there's often a lot of moisture, and so it tends to kind of steam almost. other herbs. And I'm going to put in a bay leaf. I'm going to put in half a teaspoon of rosemary. If you've got fresh rosemary, so much the better. Half a tin of tomatoes. You can do this by guesswork. And if you've got one or two in the freezer that are left from last year, you can put some of those in as well. There we are, that's my half a tin of tomatoes. In goes 60 mils of wine. And now we've got to get that back up to a nice boil. We're also going to add a pinch of salt, so it's always good to put it in your hand in case the lid falls off. Pinch of salt. And half a teaspoon of sugar. You often use sugar when you've got tomatoes because they can be quite acidic, and it helps to just bring out that lovely tomatoey flavour rather than it being just sharp. So once that's boiled, we put the lid on and we let that just simmer away for about 20 minutes. Now make sure your lid is a good fit because there isn't a huge amount of liquid, and if your lid doesn't fit you might lose some through evaporation from the steam coming out, so try and use a lid that's a good fit. Right, I think that's good enough. So the lid goes on, we turn the heat down and we set the time up for 20 minutes. That made me jump. Right, the timer's gone, so it's had its 20 minutes now. At this stage, be careful when you lift the lid off. Whew, get a face full of steam. Give it a stir, and if you're not sure about some of your bigger pieces, use something like a spoon and just break them up and you can see whether they are cooked in the middle. They ought to be, but if you're not confident, just double check for goodness sake. Now at this point we put in half a tin of cannellini beans, and these have been drained. It's a bit of a guess for this. And what's left will go into the freezer in a little box and they'll be fine for another dish. Right, so that's that. Now we'll give that a stir. They'll reduce the heat a little bit, so I'm going to just turn that back up. I'll put it onto a smaller burner actually for its simmering because it was on a very big wok burner to start with. So we'll get that to boil. And then 5 minutes and it will be ready. Now if you are not ready at that point, this will quite happily sit. You could turn it off and bubble it up when you're ready to eat it. If you think that you've not got enough free liquid, add a little bit more of whatever was the liquid you put in. Wine, red wine, white wine, or a little bit more stock, or just plain water, and that will give you the juice. And then you need to serve this with new potatoes or pasta, and I would serve something green with it, but for goodness sake don't give anybody the bay leaf, okay? So here we are, it's had its 5 minutes with the beans in, and I'm going to serve it with some pasta and some green beans, and I'm just going to make sure I don't give anybody the bay leaf. So I hope you like this one and enjoy.